Hello, my friend. Welcome to Do Not Talk. Talk about two things you never stop. Take two. It's late. Hello, my friends. I'm CharLee Simons. Welcome to Do Not Talk. Talk about two things you're never supposed to talk about: politics and religion. And oftentimes not doing it very eloquently, but that's okay. I try. I keep swinging for the fences. I'm glad you're here. Please like this show before we even get started. Just hit that like button right there. Like button right there. It makes a big difference for the algorithms wherever you're watching. If it's on twitch.tv, YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, where else am I? I'm X, and Rumble, my favorite, rumble.com/do not talk. My favorite because they've deleted none of my shows. They've never threatened me. Everyone else is freaking out, losing their minds because of the things I talk about and language I use, which is honest language. I don't let the left dictate the English language to me. Never. Oh, CharLee, you'd make so much money. You should be over on YouTube. You can really grow your audience there. You just kind of have to curb your speech a little bit. You can't come right out and call things for what they are. You have to actually use little code words and so on. Screw YouTube. I'm not going to do it. So I don't gain the traction and I don't get the big audience and I don't make big money. I made from Rumble $50.60 last month. So, but I'm sticking with them. I thank God for them. And they've featured many of my shows as editor's picks, which is always exciting. Recent show I did with Juan O'Savin got chosen as an editor's pick. And it's fun watching the numbers grow. And that's you sharing the shows and letting others know about what I'm doing here on this little old channel and supporting. You can support financially if you want, and I would really appreciate it. Somebody just recently made a $300 donation, little gift to keep the show going, and I desperately need a new computer. I mean, that's not a want, that's a need if I'm going to continue, because this one is done. Glitchy stuff happening. And I don't do porn. I don't go to any of the kind of sites that might get viruses on there and all that kind of stuff. I don't do that. Just now, though, I don't know if that showed up on the screen, but the whole thing glitched. And it's a computer. It's just, she's old. She's been a great girl. Probably time to retire. Put the computer out to pasture. What do they do in pasture? I don't know. I don't live in the world of algorithms. But they do. So hitting the like button makes a big difference. Commenting down below too also makes a big difference. It'll expand your territory if you have viewers actually commenting and liking. And I just found this out recently that trolls, pigs who want to see guys like me shut up and shut down, they will target and they'll hit on comments below on a show. They'll hit the thumbs down on all of them. And that has some kind of negative effect on algorithms now, too. That's what they're doing because they know this. They know this stuff, right? Living in mommy's basement. And they're all so much smarter and brilliant than the rest of us. And they're going to take down the world. Why? I don't know. It's exciting. And I don't have anything other than video games. Mom, another Hot Pocket. Arthur Shopper is my guest today, and I always like having him on. We talk about some great stuff, powerful stuff, important stuff. Today I happen to feel very passionately about what we're going to talk about, and it's California schools, public education. Speaking of making money, I wish I had $1 for every time I've said, get your kids out of public school. We're about to explore why it's important for you to do that. Maybe you're not motivated enough to do it. Maybe you don't really care all that much. Well, I'm already paying property taxes, or I'm a single parent and I can't afford to send my kid to a private school. No, there's alternatives. You're just not exploring it. I hate to call you out on that. I please don't take that personally. I'm encouraging you to do a little exploration. You don't want to. I just got back from military duty. I can't talk about what I do because I'm a conservative and they'd get all pissed off. I can't talk about what I do with the military, but I'm in the military. A week on base, on post. And I've become great friends with he just became a lieutenant. Congratulations, buddy. Second lieutenant on his way to first. And he was a non-com for years, sergeant on the sergeant side of things like me. And, now he's impotent. And I asked him how his family was doing. And he was talking about his daughter just starting high school. And I go, oh yeah, where? And he tells me, and I go, and he said, I know how you feel about it. I go, dude, there's so many other options. There's churches, there's Christian churches that offer schools. You just gotta look them up. You gotta search for them. Local Christian church offering education for children. Start there. Then you got the charter school thing. You got the private school. I know you can't afford it, but believe me, there's scholarships for it. There's help. There's grants. There's all kinds of things for middle and lower middle income folks like us, or at least like me. I can't speak for you. There's alternatives. There's ways. You just got to explore it. Get them out of public education. Why? Let's find out now with Arthur Schopper on Do Not Talk. Are you ready? Hit it. What's up, Bubba?
Hey, how you doing there, Charlie? And don't forget, tell everybody.
I just love this guy. He actually went and bought one of my mugs. Yep, we bought one of my mugs from my website. Let's talk about politics and religion. And yes. I appreciate that so much. Not many guests actually go to my website and buy merchandise, and I never charge anybody for being on my show. So just that simple act right there means so much to me. Thank you, buddy.
I'm glad.
CharLeeSimons.com, my website right here. You click on that merch store tab. There's ways you can just give there too if you want. Yes. Hit the like button, comment, buy stuff from my store. What? Simple. Come on. Am I asking too much? So let's talk about your latest article at townhall.com. California schools.
Oh, brother. The most recent one specifically, it was a response. There was a huge outpouring of outrage and frustration on behalf of a teacher in the Houston Independent School District, Darius Williams, and he just broke down and cried. It was the second day of school.
That guy. Yes.
And he was.
So I am on my lunch break. It is, 11:30 or something like that. And I just finished a 3-hour class. We have what's called block, and block is where first and second periods are combined for subjects that need it. And so I literally broke down in the middle of class because I'm teaching seniors. These kids are leaving high school and going to college, hopefully, after they finish. We had 2 paragraphs to read, 1 sentence complete to write. I gave them the sentence stems. I basically completed the sentence for them in the model. These are 17 and 18-year-old kids, and they couldn't fill in 4 words. 4 words. I gave them the scenario. We annotated together. I gave them the answers before we even had the problem. And they couldn't do it. I don't know. I simply don't know where the problem is. This is only day 2. And I have seniors who simply cannot read and seniors who cannot write. They cannot write. they could reason, they have the ability to defend their reasoning. If it's talking to their homeboy, but applying that to a written text, 2 paragraphs, and they couldn't do it. Our young black men, our young brown men, our young black girls, and our young brown girls oh God.
Yeah, there you go. And he was lamenting that he had just finished a 3-hour session with students, and he broke down and cried in the middle of it because the kids can't read, they can't write, they can't even write down 4 words to fill out an application. I mean, this is horrendous. We are seeing an absolute disservice to parents, children, taxpayers in many large municipalities. There was a recent story, it was out of San Francisco. You have 96% of the kids that get accepted from this high school to UC Berkeley, they can't read. They can't do basic math. And major universities, even in the state of California, are urging the powers that be to restore the SAT, the ACT, and the other standardized.
That's a real deal. You're right. Even universities scrapped all that testing requirement stuff to make it more equitable and easier for everybody.
All in the name of equity. And what it's done is it's made things more inequitable for starters. Furthermore, it has set an entire class of students on the fast track to failure. What we see the culmination of this with this teacher in Texas, he's a senior teaching an English class. And at that point, students are supposed to be well-read enough, educated enough that they can start reading Hamlet. They can start reading British, English, and even world literature in English. And they can't even read at all. I was just as heartbroken, just as outraged as this teacher. I mean, it's a horrible thing. But we're looking at the culmination of a long process of failure. What you have is just a conveyor belt in a dropout factory that is pushing kids out the door with the mortar board and a diploma that says, hey, everybody, this person graduated, and they are completely unprepared, uneducated, unable to do anything. I mean, this is a travesty. But are we just going to keep being angry at the situation? I wanted to start pushing further.
Yeah.
Why is the teacher still there? Let's ask the harder questions.
Hey, you mentioned the mortar board. Okay, move the tassel from left to right. No, that's left to right.
Yes.
They can't even do that. But going back to that video on that teacher, two thoughts.
You know what I mean?
There's
Why
2
are
thoughts.
You still there? I mean,
2 thoughts about that video, though, that teacher in Houston. I loved it. I'm glad that he did it. And the thing that sets it apart, because somebody was asking about, I was listening to talk radio and they were talking about this in my area. And they were asking, do you think that guy got in trouble for doing that? Do you think he got in trouble?
You know what? He has a
probably. Other teachers would love to say this and would love to expose this, but they're scared to death. And they love their little jobs. They love their perks they've gotten from the unions they belong to and their little retirement. And they don't want to mess with it. And they're not going to rock the boat because that's more important to them than actually being an effective educator. And that's because you have, especially California, dictating curriculum to all of them. They might be completely against what they're being forced to teach, but they have to, or they don't keep their jobs and their phony baloney benefits.
But see, here's the thing.
The other thing about that video is one of the questions that teacher asked was, how did this happen? How did this happen? How do you not know how this happened? You, buddy, you and others like you who are afraid to speak up and who are sitting back. You just want to keep getting your paycheck and you're letting it happen. There's no responsibility there. No taking responsibility. I would have loved for him to say, we did this, but no, they're not going to say anything like that. But I loved it. I'm glad it went viral.
That's essential. And that's where I took off with my article. And the title of it just says it all. Crying about the kids' failures is not going to help them succeed. where is the proactive effort to fix this? And that's one of the questions that I put forward. It's, where have you been, Mr. Williams? You must have seen this. I mentioned there was a Democrat lawmaker. Okay, we're talking about State Rep Harold Dutton, who would vote against his party, vote with the Republicans to implement education reforms. Even Sheila Jackson Lee missed all the, give the illegals lollipops when they cross the border. Even she was an advocate for school choice. There was a bill that even U.S. Senator Ted Cruz and Sheila Jackson Lee co-authored to promote school choice. I am not kidding you. You have like far left and really strong conservative that came together when it came to education opportunity. You have some Democrats still that have enough courage to speak out. And Mr. State Rep Harold Dutton, he's no longer there, but I'll still call him State Rep. He noticed the problems. This is Wheatley High School, specifically in the Houston Independent School District. He noticed the failing scores. He noticed the culture of failure as early as 2003. But he didn't introduce a bill to initiate a state takeover of the Houston Independent School District until 2015. So, okay, you got 12 years that passed before there's a state takeover effort. The state has taken over the schools now. That's true. And
that's the goal in California. That's always been the goal.
You have 2003 to 2015, and now they initiate legislative effort for the state to take over the school. Here we are in 2026. So 13 and then another 13 years, 11 years, and the kids still can't read. This idea that one teacher crying about this problem is somehow going to change everything. We see how long it takes. The blob that dominates public education is insurmountable unless you have like a force of nature or a natural disaster. I kid you not. The one that it's just coming to mind now in Louisiana, in New Orleans, when you had Hurricane Katrina wiping out everything, the state took the initiative. They didn't let a crisis go to waste. Sorry, it's a little glib. And they just reformed the education system. They fired all the teachers and they set everything up on a school choice merit-based system. It took a natural disaster to reform the system. And of course, we have seen the larger reforms, whether it's school choice or cracking down on DEI, LGBT, CRE indoctrination, limiting the power of teachers' unions. All of this has skyrocketed after COVID. Yet, how many parents can wait a year, 2 years, 4 years to take over a school board? How many parents should have to wait as their kids, like think about it, 4 years is a long time in a child's life, going from second grade to sixth grade. That's a lot of education they're supposed to have received. That's a lot of training they're supposed to have received. And that kid has had to suffer piecemeal reforms at best and see no real success in the long term. This is a problem. And it's not going to change with the teacher breaking down saying, my kids can't read. Where were you, Mr. Williams? Why didn't you stand up to your teachers union? Why didn't you speak up to the press? Okay,
they're
so
scared. Most teachers will not back them. Most teachers will not back them. Their fellow teachers will not back each other.
And this just really incites my outrage. You know what? Then they don't really care about kids, do they? If they care more about their job,
I agree with you.
About their children, then they need to get out of that business entirely.
I agree with you totally.
Most teachers, they can tell you, you don't go into education, you get rich. That's not how it works. It's a service. Now, I think that teachers should be paid more if they were actually doing their job, but you'd have to bring in the merit pay system. You'd have to bring in an accountability system, just like it is in the rest of the world, in the real world of employment. You don't do your job, you get fired. A lot of teachers don't do their jobs. They don't get fired. You had mentioned something briefly. What happened to this teacher? I looked it up. I don't see anything published or, there's no media covering that he was retaliated against. Chances are nobody's going to mess with him.
Because it went viral.
It went viral. He's African.
That doesn't mean later, after fervor dies down, he'll get his.
It's a majority minority. It's a majority minority district, and it is bad PR to target a teacher, who's Black or Hispanic. Look, I don't think any teacher should be targeted if they do the right thing. But hey, if you've got a leverage looking at the political climate, use it. But even then, he should have quit by now. At some point, you can't sit there and supervise the failure and just cry about it. That's a comment I also made. The good news, there was an article in the local press there in the Houston area. They have a hard time filling positions in Houston ISD. They can't find teachers. Of course they can't, because teachers don't want to supervise the failure. They don't want to deal with a mass of students who have been taught that they don't have to do anything, and they're going to get a diploma at the end of 12 years, having done nothing, learned nothing, and respected no one. There are other stories that I've read about, teachers, even substitutes. They allow the kids to fight and they record it. You have such unethical conduct from teachers. And Texas has exposed a serious sexual misconduct problem in the public school system. It is atrocious in Texas. Really? But I don't think it's just Texas. I think California has the same problem. I think that Florida has the problem. New York has the problem. It's just that Texas grassroots activists and conservative media like Texas Scorecard, I want to give them a brief shout out. They have made it their mission to document and expose every time that a Texas teacher is busted, arrested, convicted for sexual misconduct. And it is startling how often it's happening. Breitbart has done stories about it, that there was a record number of teachers going to jail for sexual perversion with students. Greg Abbott, the governor, issued hosted a recent press conference saying, we must crack down on this. We need harsher penalties for teachers who are a good friend of mine. She was the Texas director for mass resistance, Tracy Shannon. She lauded this proposal. She and other activists in the state have worked very hard to push through these reforms in the legislature. Many people will be shocked. Texas, even if it's a red state, Republican, and it's getting more conservative, teachers unions still have a seat at the table. They are losing power. School choice passed last year. Thank you, Greg Abbott. That is a big step in the right direction. I don't think anybody should disparage it. God bless John Birch Society, but I think that they should allow that to continue. I think that's a bigger step towards forcing reforms in the public education system.
Amen.
This is I just think we have to expect more than just more crying and more whining and more sadness. There was a documentary, it was released 10 plus years ago, Waiting for Superman. Everybody is sitting around in the public education system waiting for a big, brilliant, charismatic leader who will step into the system and fix everything. Michelle Rhee, she was the chancellor of the Washington, D.C. school system, and she did incredible things in the district. She allowed for charter changes. She tried to push through a school choice program. But we're talking about Washington, D.C., which is entrenched as it gets with union power and Democratic hegemony. And she was a Democrat herself, by the way. And yet even she ended up leaving because the resistance she faced and the resistance, the pushback, the resistance, the sabotage she had to deal with as chancellor was so great, she ended up leaving. And this brings me to a point where I think a larger discussion is needed in this country. I flirted with this 10 plus years ago. I said maybe there's two V's for victory when it comes to public education. We need to talk about a voucher system. School choice isn't enough. A voucher. So it's public money, but I can spend it at a private school, as well as a public school, as well as a charter school, or mom and dad can take that voucher and spend it for homeschool. V, voucher. The other V, voluntary. That shocks people. Some people even laughed at me, but we're getting to a point where public education isn't education anymore. And Mr. Williams' emotional breakdown proves this. It's not happening anymore. And there are no accountability metrics to ensure that public education is actually doing its job. Dran Reese has talked about this in her Salt and Light ministry. She helps parents to homeschool their kids. And I am beginning to think that's the only route. You just got to get your kids out. If I had children, I would do everything I could to take care of them at home. My cousin in New Mexico, she homeschooled her kids. She's not an educator, but she is a businesswoman. She runs a farm. She has had numerous experiences. She's run a business. She's worked in farms, firms large and small. She has an adequate educational background. She homeschooled her kids. And the biggest reason, her two daughters, they said, we don't want to wear masks because this is New Mexico, because they were more hardcore about the COVID mandates. But my point is, it's getting easier and easier for parents to take charge and say, no, I'm not pushing my kid through that. We have to have that larger discussion here. Our kids can learn more. They know more than the teacher. Shirley Huzar, may she rest in peace. She was a big time school choice advocate. She was pointing out kids know more than the teacher because they're so savvy with the smartphones. They know how to do social media. They know how to work with all the intricacies of this technology when most teachers barely have a smartphone, if that. So I want to see more than the crying. I want to see.
I knew an elementary public school teacher who I was appalled at what a horrible speller she was and how terrible she was at grammar, and her English language skills were appalling. And that was one of the things she taught in public school and elementary.
The teacher had such poor skills.
Because they're screaming for teachers. People aren't taking that well, for one thing, because they're probably scared to death of being beat up by their own students and unable to even reciprocate or do anything back. There's schools in California now where you can't even send them out of the classroom anymore for disrupting. You can't send them to the principal's office anymore for disrupting class. This is insane what's happening. But here's what I think. It's so hard to live here. It's so hard to survive financially. And they know that most of us cannot afford private schools, private education, cannot afford even Christian schools. We don't have the money to do it. And that's why I said at the beginning, please just do a little online search for Christian churches offering education for children. They'll pop up, explore. There's some of them that it won't cost you anything because this is their mission. They know that Jesus loved the children and said, don't stop them from coming to me. And by the way, anybody who jacks with kids, it would be better for you to have a heavy millstone tied around your neck and to be cast into the sea. He didn't say it'd be better if you did it to yourself. He said it'd be better if it were done to you.
Yeah.
I take that seriously.
Yep.
I am dead set against what's going on in public education. I've been screaming for so long now. Just please get them out. Find a way to get them out. But it's not going to get better. The government of California, the Gavin Newsom and those clowns love the idea of the state controlling all public education.
Yeah.
So these school districts that are struggling, that happened in Sacramento, my area, Sacramento Unified. They were really having hard time financially because people were taking their kids out of school and COVID and all that stuff. And they threatened, we're going to take over the entire school district unless you do better financially. Do better how? They can't turn around and just make more money doing something. Parents are already having to pay for everything for their kids for any kind of extras. This is insane. It's so top heavy with the administration. It's bloated. It's filthy. And it's all the unions. The CTA, California Teachers Association, is one of the most powerful unions, not in the state, in the nation.
Yep.
Naturally and members wise, one of the most powerful in the nation. The Teachers Union in California. And it's got a cutesy little name. Oh, it's California Teachers Association. It's like the what is that? Parents Teachers. So it's like the PTA. That's all. It's like the PTA. No, it's a frickin' union, and they have garnered themselves into positions of tremendous power. And through the tenure that Arthur just mentioned, they can't even get fired for doing sexually perverse things. They just get moved to different school districts. Because they don't want to get fired because that piece of crap teacher diddling kids can turn around and sue the school district for wrongful termination.
You know, and the way that the mandated reporter laws are structured in this state, in California, if a staffer, a teacher, an administrator failed to report, that opens the door for the abuser to sue. I mean, this is obscene. This is how outrageous it is. And of course, you know, school districts have no incentive to report the child abuse because they know they're going to get sued. So their only incentive is to try to hide it as much as possible. The most notorious example was the Mark Burnt case from Miramonte Elementary School in South Los Angeles. And boy, this is so creepy because that teacher, Mark Burnt, he lived in Torrance. He lived here. Oh, it's so creepy. He was exposed because he took those creepy photos of the kids. And then how stupid and evil can you be? He had the photos developed at the local CVS in Redondo Beach, and they turned it over to the authorities, and everything exploded from there. And not only was he busted, but it was years of child abuse that Mark Byrd had engaged in. And then another teacher was implicated in perversion. The superintendent at the time, John Daisy, he decided he removed every single teacher from Miramonte. He took them all out and brought in substitutes for the rest of the year. It was such a immediate necessary stopgap measure to ensure there would be no more child abuse. I mean, it's just unbelievable. You see these outrageous cases emerge, and then there will be a couple more teachers that fall, and then everything settles down again. Because at the end of it all, that blob, the educational bureaucracy, whether it's the janitors union, the administrators, the teachers union,
yes. Everyone has their union.
It's all about protect the institution to keep the money flowing from the state. And the best way is that you take your parents take their kids out, and the feds too. President Trump cracking down on this is a good step in the right direction. Stop teaching the kids gender ideology. Stop teaching the kids LGBT. Start teaching them the ABCs. If you don't do that, we're going to take your money away. If you allow the boys into the girls' sports and spaces, we're going to take your money away. These schools have become absolutely ground central. I remember I was covering all the teachers unions like they got nothing better to do. It was a Saturday. I think it was May 15th. It was 2025. Hawthorne, California. You've got the major Tesla headquarters that are still here. There's a major Tesla plant in Hawthorne. And so all the teachers unions, they showed up and they protested and they wanted to shout down Elon Musk because of the Doge program. They were cutting all the waste, cutting all the, decommission the education. They had all this time to come and protest. There's nothing about, they're like, we want to protect education, but they had a huge protest there. They had all of the left-wing interest groups that were there. They kept talking about amnesty. They talked about Palestine. They talked about climate change. Was there anybody there to talk about the low test scores? Was there anybody there to talk about the needs of the kids so that they would become strong citizens who could be successful adults? No, it's all about this perverse Marxist push to normalize everything left wing. That's what teachers unions have become. It is horrendous. It's horrific.
I don't say have become. I think always have been. Always have been. They've shown their true colors. This is who they've been all along.
Since the 1950s, for sure, when they put in place laws where, it was no longer a spoil system. That was all taken out.
Taking prayer out of school.
But, beforehand, there was the spoil system. Maybe we should
taking
go back
Bibles out of the library.
You're the wrong party, you're out. You know what I mean? It's, at least you can fire people more quickly, but I don't know. The technology is there. We have the opportunity. And you want to talk about, I want to get to this specific topic. I have a friend of mine, her name is Shonda Lobato. She works as a special education advocate. An entire profession has emerged to deal with public education because you have parents, they have children with special needs, whether they're autistic, whether they have multiple deficits, whether they're emotionally disturbed, they're ADHD. They are required by federal as well as state law to receive specific individual education plans. There are supposed to be resources plentifully available to these children. And guess what? The parents with their autistic kid, they face nothing but roadblocks. They face nothing but legal hurdles. This is another article I wrote. This was a week and a half ago. Special education failures in public education. They are the norm, not the exception. It is staggering. I have heard story after story from parents. I had a friend of mine who lived a couple blocks south from me. He had a daughter with multiple deficits. Now, by law, public schools are required to provide an education. Now, they don't get a lot of money for the special ed kids. It's a greater cost. It's a greater liability. There's a lot of issues. So school districts, which are never held accountable, nobody gets fired, nobody goes to jail unless it's really egregious and it's found out in the press, they have every incentive to stonewall and block and frustrate the parents. It is stunning to me.
And they wait for the fervor to die down or the media to
die down. But I want to speak to the whole legal challenge. It is stunning. Parents will go to court over and over again to demand the resources which they are entitled to by federal and state law. And yet nobody's held accountable because it's the school. You don't sue the principal, you sue the school. You don't sue the superintendent, you sue the school. It's the school that has to do it. So individuals and their bad actions are never held accountable. This was an egregious example that happened. It was in El Monte Unified School District. You had a little girl. She was doing pretty well at home. during the COVID lockdown stuff. She was willing to learn. She was bright. She was able to understand stuff. Her name was Adriana. But as soon as COVID dissipated and all the lockdown orders went away, she went back to El Monte Unified in the elementary school programs. And she had nothing but problems. She had sensory issues. She would act up in class. This was unusual conduct. And over, the parents would say to the school district, you need to give our child a test. You need to give them an assessment. I think they have a learning disability or something to that effect. Well, they were finally able to get the tests done on, by a third party. And it was determined their daughter, Adriana, had autism. She had learning issues. She was able to do well at home because it was a safer environment and the parents were there for her. But the teachers, the school, the principal, at the elementary school in El Monte Unified, they did nothing. They refused to help her. Instead, they would just discipline her repeatedly. She acted up in class. She threw something at the wall. They would make her stay in class. They would withhold her from lunch. They would withhold, and that's illegal, actually. You can't do that. The kid can have lunch in class, but you can't withhold them from having
This is bizarre. This is completely the opposite of what I just said earlier about teachers are not even allowed to punish children, can't even send them to the principal's office anymore. How are they able to get away with this?
We're dealing with elementary school kids, so it's a little easier to be overbearing. It's a little easier to get away. They're smaller. And, I've taught all grades. I taught, from first grade to 12th. And, elementary school by and large is a little easier. You're taller. You can usually get, do this, do that, unless the whole class is crazy because the main teacher is not running the class well. So this was a routine problem. Shonda went to great lengths to be an advocate. This has now gone to court, which they are presumably going to win. But look at all the time that has passed. Okay, we're talking like 2 or 3 years now. Adriana's now in middle school. What education has she received? Has she gotten any resources that she actually needs? And even when the parents are vindicated in court, all the time has passed. Are they supposed to make up that 4 or 5 years of learning then in 1 year for a kid? I mean, this is awful. And this is routine. Shonda, she's got another story she wants me to tell people about out of Santa Ana Unified. I mean, and then you add to the complications. We're talking about El Monte as well as Santa Ana. You've got a large illegal population. I'm going to say it. You have large illegal, English as a second language, and they're not even literate in their first language, which is Spanish. This is something I ran into when I taught in Southgate. You had kids who couldn't even, they could not read English. They could barely read Spanish. They don't have numeracy or literacy in their own language. And then there's English. And I was a French teacher. I was supposed to be teaching kids a third language, and they can't even read in their main one, and they can't read.
Oh my goodness.
And this is a routine failure. I talked about this in another article. California schools are routinely failing. I would have English teacher colleagues of mine. Their kids were sitting in their class, junior year, senior year English teachers, just like Mr. Darius Williams, and the kids could not read. They went over those teachers went over the transcripts of the kids in their classes. They had been pushed ahead. They just were automatically promoted 6th, 7th, 8th grade, even though they were getting straight Fs. This is a travesty. And you know what? More teachers do need to speak out, but more importantly, more teachers, instead of going on strike because they want to talk about Palestine or LGBT, they ought to be going on strike because they can't teach their kids, because they can't discipline their kids. Let me tell you that story. This is stuff I didn't have a chance to write about. I have the town hall here. My state assemblyman is Almer Atsuchi. He's the creepy groomer who is the chairman of the Assembly Education Committee. So he has to pay his dues to be the chairman of that committee. He wanted to be the next superintendent of schools here in California. Thankfully, he got stomped on in the primary. So there is some good news. There's a silver lining. But in a town hall that we had 2 years ago, there was a teacher here in Torrance, and she was sharing how she's afraid of her kids. She's afraid of them hurting her. And she's not able to take control of her class. And she's asking the assemblyman to help her. But what was interesting is I was sitting there and I was like nodding my head, showing support for her. And she didn't have the guts to call me out by name or anything. But she's like, now there's some people in this room who agree with me, but they should know that I'm not conservative. I'm very progressive. I'm very left wing. And I was thinking to myself, that's why you have the problems you've had. You have voted for this, lady. You voted to have a class.
You have made this. Yep.
You voted for this, and now
how telling is that about how prevalent it is? She knows that all of her other fellow teachers and administrators are like her, so she's going to point that out so she's not targeted. However, I think maybe Arthur has a point, but no, that shows you how prevalent it is in education, public
and
education.
They are fomenting it. They are part of it, and I pivot back to Darius Williams. That's another question I put. Does he vote for this? Is he a progressive himself? Is he a liberal who thinks that the answer to education is to get rid of systemic this and that, or that kids are failing because of systemic racism? Does he live in that progressive dystopia where everything will be fine if we just pass a bunch of rules and hold nobody accountable? Or is he a common sense individual who wants to see accountability? And we don't know yet, but I will bet you anything that Mr. Darius Williams is probably a liberal. That he's one of those bleeding heart types that I'm going to go in there and I'm going to change the kids because I'm just going to love them into fullness when there's no order, there's no accountability, there's no discipline. And you can't really show love if there's no order. Students will not respect the teacher if there is no follow through, if they don't listen. This is a huge problem. And again, where my article started with, okay, you're crying. What do you want to do about it? This is not going to fix the problem. Now, there is a silver lining of sorts to this entire mess. This was an article I wrote 2 weeks ago. California schools are going broke. No surprise. No surprise there. Of course they're going broke because you know what? Parents are taking their kids out. Parents are taking charge. They will not allow their children to be indoctrinated, to be held back, or to be abused. They won't tolerate this.
Unfortunately, though, it's still a much smaller percentage of all the students that are in school. So as long as they have a majority or at least half or a little bit more than half of the kids that they're bringing up with their indoctrination, they believe that they are going to have a whole generation that's going to think like they will, and they can attain their little Star Trek utopia. And they know that. That's why the state wants to take over public education. I really believe that.
I'm going to make the silver lining a little wider, and I hope it helps make your day. Because going all the way back to 2021, I went to an LA Unified protest. These were teachers who opposed their union. They were all for health freedom. They didn't want to take a jab. They didn't want to wear a mask. Now, some of them were left wing on other issues. You know, they were like pro-Palestine or pro-LGBT, but we were there about health freedom and about educational accountability. And there was a young lady, she was a sophomore in high school, and she was one of the keynote speakers at the rally. This was outside of 333 South Beaudry. And she just complained, and she said, you know, all they do is teach us LGBT, and all they do is teach us about race, and we don't learn anything, and I'm tired of it, and I'm going to be homeschooled. Her mom stepped up and homeschooled her. Let me widen the silver lining wider. The enrollment has plummeted so much in LA Unified. The district will go bankrupt in a year. It is that bad. They've already lost the superintendent, Carvalho. There's a huge financial fallout from that. Multiple sexual abuse lawsuits have to be settled. Huge amount of money there. The teachers union, a bunch of greedy, rapacious, Scrooges wanting to squeeze the district for all they can, not recognizing that if there's no money, there's no school district. And, I think this was in 2017, 2018, the last time there was a bond floated to help LA Unified. It failed. It actually failed. The voters said, no, we're not giving more money to this district. They're looking at multiple schools. I have a friend of mine, his nieces go to Washington Prep on 104th and Western. And that school's enrollment has plummeted to 1,000 students. That is a third of what it used to be 20 years ago. Dang. People are fleeing LA Unified. They're moving out of the state because they can't afford it, sure. But they're also taking their kids to Downey Unified, Norwalk, anywhere else where they know their kids are not going to get jumped and beat up or, God forbid, even killed. Oh Lord, let me take a brief detour. I worked at a marketing firm. Oh man, one of my colleagues, she was Filipino. She went to Narbonne High School, and she never forgot this. When she was a junior in high school, this is probably like, it was like 10 years ago at the time, her friend got jumped and beat up so badly, he died the next day. He died the next day. You have kids that get killed. in the public school system. They're not safe. And I was an observer when I was getting my teaching credential. This was like in 2004 going into 2005. There would be threats of gang violence. Half the classes wouldn't show up. I was in a history class observing it, and like 20 seats were empty. And then on top of that, you had like 2 or 3 kids, they were asleep. And the teacher, he had no other recourse. So he'd take out his Polaroid, take a photo, and post it on the wall just to kind of make fun of him. And he had a wall of Polaroids of the kids who had fallen asleep in class. This was 20 years ago. So
the kids probably turned it into a badge of honor. It was probably something they bragged about.
What else can you do? Because, hey, if you have a hard time trying to manage a class, the kid falling asleep is a lot better than the kid throwing things at you. So I can give the teacher a little bit of credit, I guess, especially. And this was, you're bringing up the point about how teachers cannot send kids out. Yeah, you can't. That's like technically that's a suspension. You cannot suspend kids anymore unless they actually physically harm you. And what happens? Kids know they have more rights than the teacher. They raise hell. They take over, and there's no learning. I remember talking to a parent. This was out of Oceanside, California, and the history teacher had basically given up on teaching, in part because they can't manage the class. So it's all LGBT, be yourself, let's have parties. That's part of the reason teachers are doing this. Doesn't let them off the hook. Don't get me wrong. But this is part of the reason why teachers are just making it a party every day, because they can't do anything else. Because if they try to push, if they try to
pajama day, every Friday is pajama day now.
There you go. It's pajama day. It's watch a movie day. I mean,
we're not kidding. We're not making this up.
We're not. No. I mean, I personally saw this. Oh gosh,
it's nothing but babysitting.
If even that, it's more like, and the babies want to sit on you. That's what it comes down to. That's what it is, babysitting. The babies want to sit on you, and they're not. They're 17-year-old babies. They don't have the maturity of an adult or a young adult. They act like children. Right. They throw a temper tantrum, and they'll throw things at you if you don't go along with it. Oh my gosh, this is what it is, and we need more people who have the guts. Teachers have to quit. I think this is the only way out. And it is a scary thing. I understand, having or not having a job, it's tough. But, to Darius Williams, if you really care about the kids, then you need to leave. That is the only thing you can do. I will not enable this. I cannot be a part of this anymore. I'm out of here. And I do believe private schools, charter schools, it can be done. But if the district in your community is not teaching your kids, if they're interested in activism over academics, if they spend more time protecting bad teachers than protecting good students, you got to take your kids out. This is the way that you start bankrupting, bringing them down, because teachers unions are going to have no matter how crappy the state of California will be. I don't think, even Governor Becerra, I'm sorry, Steve, I don't think you're going to make it. Even a Governor Becerra, even a Governor Newsom, they cannot justify to an electorate, I'm going to send money to schools that are failing and keep paying them not to teach anybody. I just don't think it's going to happen. Teachers unions, they don't have power if they're fired. This might be a thing that breaks the teachers unions, is that the schools collapse on themselves and the unions have nothing to organize about. They won't have a reason to coalesce. I don't know. These are some possibilities. You even have people like Antonio Villaraigosa, who had floated a constitutional measure that you have a right to an education, which would, underneath all of it, force the schools to allow for choice, would end up breaking up the tenure laws, because the children have a right to an education. So you can't get that away, or you can't undermine that. I don't know, but the bottom line is this. Public education is not public because they keep secrets, and it's not education because the kids aren't learning. And it is time for a rigorous pushback on this. And if it means you take your kids out, then that's what you have to do. 3 articles I've already written. I'm surprised, one after another, and Town Hall has taken them all up. Normally, I wouldn't go into the education line. There's so much we could be talking about. And I think Trump deserves a lot of credit. He's not getting enough when it comes to education reform, having a school choice program, which even Democrat states have jumped into, because they know education is so bad in their state and they hate their unions. Kathy Hochul in New York, she hates the teachers union because they hate her. They're taken over by the DSA Nazis. They have taken over, so they want her out. So she's willing to push back because it's her only chance of holding on to the governor's seat. This is what we need to see. I think, what is it, Dan Stein or Dave Stein, who the governor of North Carolina, I think he jumped into the school choice program. Something like that happened. But there has to be a real ground truth moment here. Mr. Williams, we're sorry that you're sad, but crying isn't going to solve the problem. It's not going to protect the kids. It's not going to help the education system. It's not going to fix this.
Yeah, we're sorry that you're sad. Uh, what is? Can you think of any example of something that's socialistic that the government controls and the government runs that is successful and actually turning a profit in any country, not just the United States? Can you think of anything? Amtrak comes to mind. Dismal failure, loses millions and millions, even billions of dollars every year. Horrible. Social. They socialized the railroad system because the Southern Pacific and all the other different railroad companies were realizing there's not a future in travel for people, and with trains we're losing money. We're just going to quit doing it. Oh, what's the brilliant idea? The government will come in and do it. We'll take over. It's failed. Everything that's socialistic fails. It just does, because eventually you run out of other people's money. And in California, I've known that this was a socialistic, almost communistic education system since I myself was in high school. I figured it out. This is bad. This is ridiculous. I don't think people even realize how bad it is. Everything I know myself, believe me, I did not learn in school. I learned on my own. I learned after I got out of that centrifuge of crap that they just keep spewing out, and it's only gotten worse. And the teachers now, you used to have some with integrity, but I'm telling you, those got fired during the whole COVID shutdown because they wouldn't take the shot. They're the ones who got fired because they wouldn't teach kids that everything homo is great. You just have to accept it. You might want to think about actually becoming one. It's exciting. So the teachers who said no to that, they've been fired. Any teachers with integrity are gone now. And you're left with blue-haired, pierced-lipped freaks who take down the American flag and put up the pride flag. This is what's going on in public education, but you're still accepting it. You're still thinking, well, we can just run for school board and we'll be able to turn our district around. That's great. Turn it around to what? To where it's a little safer for them to continue being force-fed the state curriculum of education, because that's what it is. It's socialistic. And President Trump, I had this little encounter with somebody over on X who was posting about Trump is taking down the Department of Education. Is this what you voted for? I couldn't wait to go, yep. That's one of the top 3 things I voted for, taking down the Department of Education. Jimmy Carter, one of the top 5 or bottom 5 worst presidents this country's ever had. He's the one that started that debacle. And it's been just disastrous and downhill ever since. Get rid of it. Why is the federal government telling local state education school districts, period, why are any of them being controlled by the government in any way?
Yes.
You can have some standardized. All these kids need to read at this level. And that's what the SAT scores were for and all that kind of stuff, to give you an indicator of that. They took those away because it just made the poor students who don't perform quite up to par feel badly. Remember when they took grades away? You got pass or fail? They took grades away. There was no incentive to actually do better. Do you remember all that?
That's happening in other
back in the 90s. That was a Bill Clinton thing.
You know, and Jimmy Carter, he created the Department of Education for the teachers unions. It was a sop to them. You know, they said, we'll help you. You give us a Department of Ed. This is a third. Teachers unions are a 5th column in this country. They're bad. Yeah. They are really bad. And we need to call that out. I had a colleague of mine. She was a Republican, and she was one of those types. There are like Republican teachers. Yes, they exist. And they're members of teachers unions because they have to be 9 times out of 10. So they form their own little caucus within the teachers unions, and they say, we're going to change things. No, you're not. They haven't. And it was like, and I the last time
it needs to go. It just needs to go, period.
And this is a great, reconnecting conversation, because one of the teachers, the teacher I'm thinking of, I was talking with her in the midst of the Mark Burnt stuff, right? Because she also served in Torrance. And And she was like, well, everybody keeps saying that Mark Burnett has tenure. No, no, no. He has permanency. He doesn't have tenure. It's like the way she was making the argument, it's like she was still trying to defend the system. She was trying to defend the tenure system. And this is what ends up happening. You become part of you're in the system thinking you can change the system. No, you end up becoming part of it. You don't.
Yeah.
Set. This is naive of the highest order. It's time to pull the plug on it. It's time to fight against it. And every metric that diminishes the power of teachers' unions, takes away their public funding. Idaho recently passed a law. This was, you'd think a ruby red state like Idaho would have done this years ago. They finally did it this year. They passed legislation which barred schools from funding union activities, and that the unions could not take money from the schools in order to fund their activities. Awesome. That is a huge step in the right direction. This is it. Taking away right to work laws are needed now more than ever. Teachers unions have found ways around the Janus v. Ashme decision, which now says you cannot be forced to join a union. So what they do is they've created like a really tight window, usually November, December, when everybody's busy, celebrating Thanksgiving or Christmas. And they say, this is the time when you can leave a union, that you can withdraw and have your and take back your dues. And a lot of people don't pay attention and they don't get out. So there's still a lot of problems here.
Not an accident.
This is something the Trump administration and a future administration needs to address. Unions are not the panacea. I don't think, Teamsters unions shouldn't be able to take our ports hostage, for example. Police unions, we want law enforcement, but police unions, they protect their worst. That thin blue line, it protects the baddies. This is a problem. We should not have police associations who do that. Firefighters should be serving the community. They shouldn't be allowed to go on strike and hold a city hostage if they're not getting the pay raise they want. Of course, this is going far outside of the education theme, but the connection is there of unions are abusive, putting the needs of unions ahead of the well-being of children. And they run the schools, they choose the candidates. What happened in Orange County last year, you had reform-minded candidates who passed parental notification laws and parents' bills of rights, and then they recall them. They get rid of them.
You want to care. You want to see how much they care about the kids. I noticed this when I was, again, still in high school. The teachers were always going on strike because they wanted more money and they wanted less hours. And you said earlier, and I disagree with you on this, and I disagree on everybody who says this, that teachers need to be paid more. No, they get how many months off, how many days off, how many weeks off, but they still get paid the same amount as a starting police officer in a force. And that dude is putting on that suit every day and going out and putting his life on the line. They're getting paid the same amount.
I understand what you're saying. I can
starting salary for teachers, and they get so much time off, and they keep working more days off to do their little teacher prep days. Why don't you do that during the summer? Why don't you do that for the 2 weeks off you get for Christmas? Oh, by the way, that's right. You hate Christmas. You don't call it Christmas, but you get 2 weeks off for Christmas. And now California is passing another law, that public schools have to celebrate Muslim holidays or holy days.
They're not holy. There's nothing holy about them.
This is insane.
Let me qualify my remark then. That's a very fair point. If a school district has proper dynamics, you have charter schools that are completely merit-based. There was one in New York City. This was so awesome. They paid the teachers a six-figure salary. However, it was a very rigorous merit-based accountability system. Half the teachers don't make it the first year.
What a fine idea.
That's what a business is supposed to be, right? You worked in the media industry. Did you not have a first year that if you
get rewarded when you do a better job and you get higher ratings? You get paid more.
Better pay, better accountability. And that's the other thing. Teachers unions don't want merit because they want all the teachers. They don't care. They just want them to be union members who will pick it on that line and will vote for the politicians they want.
And they always went on strike at the beginning of the school year. That was the point I was getting to with the whole going on strike at the beginning of the school year. You could have been negotiating during the summer, but oh no, you were too busy having a hootenanny down at Puerto Vallarta while you're getting paid not to teach because it's your days off. And then they come back and they go on strike right at the beginning of the year when the school district and the schools are like, crap, what are we going to do? And we're losing out on federal dollars because we don't have butts in the seats because no teachers are showing up. They don't freaking care. That's I think the bottom line of what I'm saying. I'm just agreeing with Arthur. They don't care. They don't care about the kids. I don't care how nice they are when you go to parent-teacher night. They just don't care. They don't.
And you have teachers that are becoming increasingly arrogant. They think they know better than the teachers. They have no problem lecturing. The teachers know better than the parents. Yeah. They think they lecture the parents. They openly put up signs. If your parents aren't supportive or affirming, I'll be your dad. I'll be your mom. Really, they're a bunch of groomers who want to abuse the kids and push them into the LGBT closet. It's so disgusting. I got to ask you a question. You're talking about Sacramento. Did you go to like Natomas Unified, or which school district was it?
Well, I grew up in Bakersfield.
But you grew up, okay, so, and Bakersfield, unfortunately, not much better, because no matter where, you could be in the reddest of red states, but a school district is like a sea of blue because of that Marxist takeover. But speaking about the Sacramento area, it comes to mind, Natomas Unified. This was a scandal 4 years ago. You had that creepy Antifa teacher. I don't know if you remember this. And there were flags.
An Antifa flag in the classroom.
You had every parent in the community screaming at the school district. And how did the story end? That teacher was given severance. They couldn't fire him. They could not fire him. He was released with a severance and the back pay, and they recommended him for another job. It's like, this is a problem here. God bless, Project Veritas. When James O'Keefe was there, they went to great lengths to expose this creepy teacher. But what did it accomplish? Okay, so it was 2 months of drama and screaming and yelling, just like Darius Williams crying, social media, blah, blah, blah. And what changes?
Just like I said earlier, they know. The left knows. All they have to do is just wait it out. They have built themselves into such a position that they've protected their phony baloney jobs. And to quote Mel Brooks, their phony baloney jobs, Mel Gibson. And they know. They just wait it out. That's all they have to do. Oh, this'll die down. Okay, we'll let one conservative win the school board race. Okay, and then we'll just shut them down and shut them up and not let them be effective in any way.
Sorry for interrupting. I'm going back to the Natomas situation. It so burned me up when I read about this. I wanted to follow up on it. His name was Gabriel Geip. Boy, he looked like a total soy boy and a total creep. He had the LGBT commie flags. He was pledging allegiance to Antifa, all that stuff. He got 3 years pay. 3 years pay.
Yes, and severance.
Wake up, folks. I'm so sick of this. Now this is
and
like
another job.
He got another job. Thank you. In fact, New York Post, they did an article on it. They found him partying at a cafe. It's like his life is just fine. His life is going to be just fine because there will be another creepy school district that will snap him up and have no problem doing it because they want to be a part of the solidarity with the left-wing cause and fighting against the fascists, quote unquote, even though they're the fascists now. But this is like my shout out to conservatives, to the conservative press, the conservative media, the conservative whatever. They find a crappy teacher, they expose a crappy teacher, and it's like, is this really solving the problem? We have to start asking some larger questions. What do we really want to accomplish here? Are we looking for a grift, or are we looking for a juicy story so we can get 2 months of coverage and traffic on our websites?
Oh, it is, brother. I'm guilty of that. I just had a little twinge of guilt right there when you said that, because I realized I didn't do any follow through either. I didn't follow through on that story to find out whatever happened to him, and I reported on that. I was on the radio at the time. That's on me. You're right. Thank you for that. Actually, I need to rethink my life in the media.
James O'Keefe, he's no longer, he's got his own like OMG media, but O'Keefe media, let's think about this here. What he did in New Jersey was different. They have it's a one-party consent state. They were able to expose the teachers union. Phil Murphy, a Democrat, actually helped push through some reforms because of the creepy teachers unions talking about how they would just pass the limits. So we have to think larger than the schools if we want to see any success. You have to change the legislature, you have to change the laws. But again, moms and dads, action cycles so that their kid can get a better education. No, their kid needs a better education now, and they should not have to wait. I get the school choice move. Let's keep pushing that. But I think a voucher move is essential. I think Wisconsin has a voucher system. You have the money. Your kids can go with the money. Go somewhere. You had Keith Hardine's a good friend of mine. He works with Miss Ashley Gilliam. They're very big on a voucher program. They were trying to get, I think they've done something like this in Arizona. The money follows the kid, including it's a voucher. That means you can go to private school. I am okay with that. Milton Friedman, Mr. Free Market, he says, look, education has neighborhood effects. So if you're going to allow government money, he was willing to tolerate that as long as there was complete choice. There must be a complete 100% choice, and choice also must allow for freedom to teach. You can't have the wokeness being mandated from top down, because otherwise, even with school choice, the kids still have to learn the wokeness. You got to get rid of that. The other thing too, and my only hopes is that you've got individual school members like the ones in Redlands and the ones in Chino Valley. They have to form their own co-op and start rebelling against the state. Are you going to shut us all down? Bring it. They have to help out Temecula Valley, but we need to see a real concentrated effort to make that work. And once again, I'm a parent. Do I have time to wait for all these school districts to come together? No. I want
and even the good members of these school boards, they're not getting paid, or if they do, it's a very tiny little amount for their time. They're not getting paid. This is volunteer. They have their own lives, their own runs, their own businesses, and their own families to run. They're serving. This is a service that they're providing, and thank God for them. But the left, they love their little phony baloney jobs and positions of power, and they run for all this stuff again and again and again, and eventually they get in. We're seeing what happens with the Islam, the Muslims running for office small. They start small and they get in, and look what's happening in Dearborn, Michigan, and so on. This is what they do. This is what the left does. And yes, I count Muslims on the left as well. They talk about totalitarian. It's not a religion. It's a form of government. That's what that is. And they're infiltrating and taking over. And now they're bragging about it. Talk about arrogance. They're bragging about it. Oh yeah, we're still having kids, and the rest of you aren't. We're gonna eradicate you just through overpopulation. We're just gonna have more kids and force you out that way. That's they just come right out and talking that way.
We have to have like a Christian
public education and small town government in general. It's vitally important, but none of us are running for it. Let's start by getting registered to vote, please. In California, it's dismal to turn out for midterm elections. When it comes to conservatives, it's in the teens. It's pathetic. That's got to change. Get registered now. It's not too late. I think October 19th is the last day to register to vote. Registertovote.ca.gov. Registertovote.ca.gov. We need you now more than ever. And I don't care if you register as an independent or anything. I hope you register as a Republican, just because we could use you in the Republican primaries and so on. But just register, get registered to vote, and show up.
You know what?
And don't vote by mail. Vote by mail is how they're cheating.
You can go to a polling station the day of, and you can get a provisional ballot.
I know, but they don't count the provisional ballots unless they need to.
That's true. They should be registered, but we're talking about California, and they stuff the ballot and all this other perversion. So there's that.
Yeah.
But yeah, register to vote October 19th. Absolutely. But again, we're looking for a more fundamental change. Reform is needed. And the way you get that is, you got to take your kids out, find a better place to take them. Christian schools that are thriving. I know there's one in your area. I don't know the name of it, but I've been hearing about it. It got a new principal. You've got the homeschool co-ops are building. There's a theme I wanted to pick back up, because you talked about Islam, how it's infiltrating the schools. That when the Bible was taken out of schools, this is in the 40s, and then you see how it coincides with the abuse of teachers unions in the 50s. This is where things all went downhill. You take out the Bible, you take out saying the Psalm 23 at the beginning of the beginning of every day, and then look what happens. So we have seen the moral order taken out of the schools, and it's been replaced with corruption and evil. Is it any surprise? What do you do when you're surrounded by so much? Take your kids out. I think this is the theme that needs to be more prominent.
I hope so. I hope you'll follow through with that if you have school-age kids in your life in any way.
Yep.
Thank you, Arthur. Where do we find you? How do we follow what you're doing, Arthur Shopper?
I got a Substack, Arthur_Shopper. I finally got a Substack. Everybody was telling me to get one. My blog spot is still standing strong. It doubles everything I print there. And I'm also Instagram, X. It's all, I'm still up and running. They haven't taken me down. It's all good. There's lots of ways to reach out to me.
Right on. All right, my friend. Talk to you soon. Thank you again.
Thanks for having me.
Read his stuff. Read his stuff. He's a great writer. Great writer. He's just a blessing that we have a guy like him with his mind on our side. Using what he's been blessed with for good is a great thing. Thank you so much for your time. And may I encourage you to do something. I talked about liking the show and commenting and how it'll help promote with the algorithm thing. But that QR code right there, that will take you to a website called Nueva.com. Nueva as Spanish for new. It's all American-made products, very high-quality products. They insist on it. It's only about a year old, this startup company. It's only online, but it's health products and great stuff, too. I'm taking it now. This is one of the things I'm doing. This is a probiotic, Nueva Biotic, strawberry flavor, and it's a little packet. You tear it open, pour it on your tongue like Pop Rocks and let it dissolve. And I'm doing that. I'm doing several things. Like they've got this powdered green mix, and it tastes great, unlike so many that taste like grass. I'm just really impressed with them. I'm really impressed with them, and I'm seeing the results, and I'm losing weight. I'm drinking this one. It's sauce. It's a teaspoon of this sauce. It's got all these special ingredients in it, and I'm losing weight. And I got so much more energy, clarity of mind and thinking, and I'm really. And it's not fake stuff. It's not taurine. It's not your energy drinks. It's none of that. Just go to that. Go to that right there, please. That QR code. Click on that, and if you use my name as a promo code, you'll get yourself a little 10% discount on products. CharLee Simons, CharLeeSimons.com is my website. You can get everything there, and you can even buy merchandise like Arthur showed you at the beginning of the show. My big old 15-ounce coffee mug there. Let's talk about politics and religion. I got that, shirts, hats, all kinds of stuff. May God bless you and keep you. May God bless America. But most importantly, America bless God.